In just over 15 minutes, Wainwright, or rather AW as he liked to be known, will be striding into view for the last programme in the series that followed the famous fell walker on his journeys in the North Country. First on to, we go over to the newsroom and join Moira Stewart for a summary of the news.
Tonight's headlines. The biggest teachers' union has voted to boycott tests for 7-year-olds in England and Wales. Members of the National Union of Teachers ignored advice from their leadership and voted for the ban. The leaders of the African National Congress and Inkatha are trying to end the fighting between their supporters. And the firefighters in Kuwait fail again and again to put out a burning oil well. Good evening. Members of the largest teachers' union, the NUT, have voted to boycott tests for 7-year-olds due to be introduced in schools in England and Wales after Easter. Delegates at the annual conference in Scarborough took the decision against the advice of their leaders. Labour's education spokesman Jack Straw called the move indefensible, and the Department of Education has warned that teachers who refuse to carry out the tests would be breaking the law.
The testing of primary school children, already underway in Scotland and about to start elsewhere, has caused deep anger and frustration amongst teachers. They believe the tests, known as Standard Assessment Tasks, or SATs, will disrupt normal teaching throughout the first half of next term and will be of no educational value. The union leadership also opposes the tests, but believes a boycott would be a mistake. But others said the leadership was out of touch with feelings in schools.
They'd find NUT members cheering along the parents and the teachers in Scotland, thousands of whom are successfully boycotting SATs.
This union has a responsibility to defend teachers who want to make that choice, who want to say no to SATs.
The call for a boycott was carried by a 4-3 majority. The leadership will now campaign to win support for action from all teachers and from parents.
In many ways, parents should welcome the fact that the tests aren't going to go ahead, because by not doing the test, then teachers will be able to get on with the job of teaching. And that's much more productive for the pupils than administering these tests.
Despite this vote, disruption may not be widespread. There'll almost certainly have to be a national ballot of union members. And they may be unwilling to take action which, unlike in Scotland, would almost certainly be illegal.
Police in Northern Ireland are still questioning several men following the murder of 2 teenage girls and a man last Thursday at a mobile shop in Craigavon. They are also asking them about the killing of 4 Catholics earlier this month at a pub in Capper, County Tyrone.
It's thought that 4 men are being questioned at Gough Barracks in Armagh after being arrested in a series of police raids late last night. The RUC has given no further details other than confirming it is in connection with Thursday's brutal murders of 2 teenage girls and a 29-year-old man. Police believe the mobile shop killings were the work of a loyalist gang responsible for a number of atrocities over the past 15 months. Within the community, there's still a deep sense of shock at the latest outrages. More flowers and messages of condolence were left at the scene today. Detectives have continued house-to-house inquiries on the Drumbeg estate. A special incident room set up reports a good response to appeals for information. A joint funeral service will be held for all 3 victims at a local church tomorrow.
The black South African leaders, Nelson Mandela and Chief Buthelezi, had 5 hours of talks in Durban this afternoon in a new attempt to end the bloodshed between their supporters. Both said they were committed to the peace agreement they reached 2 months ago, but since then over 200 people have died in continuing township violence.
Nelson Mandela and his political rival Chief Buthelezi all smiled, but with little to smile about. 2 months after their historic reunion, their joint appeal then for peace between their warring supporters has been all but ignored. The killing in the townships runs on out of control. Both leaders agree failure to establish peace threatens the whole process of replacing white rule in South Africa with a non-racial democracy. But their meeting today produced no solid outcome, which is vital if they're to calm tempers among their supporters.
Both leaders expressed their fervent desires for peace and asked all South Africans to pray and to work for peace.
We must not prevent the people from asserting their point of view, even if it clashes with ours. That is the essence of democracy, and we are very much committed to that principle. And this is the spirit in which our discussions took place.
The need for peace could hardly be more urgent. This morning, gruesome evidence of the latest massacre at the end of another bloody week in South Africa. Here, a hand grenade was thrown into a passing van. In a series of attacks in this area of Natal, 19 people have been killed in the past 3 days. James Robbins, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Iran has expressed deep concern tonight over the civil war in Iraq. It spoke of the barbaric massacre of the Iraqi people and called for international efforts to help them. Kurdish rebels in northern Iraq claim that troops loyal to Saddam Hussein have killed countless civilians. Fighting is said to be continuing for control of the oil town of Kirkuk, with both sides claiming success.
Kurdish groups say their forces are moving to retake the strategically important town of Kirkuk that they lost during what they described yesterday as a tactical withdrawal. The rebels, some apparently using captured Iraqi armor, said today that they were once again in control of most of Kirkuk and were trying to drive Saddam's forces out of their strongholds in the south of the town. The rebels have provided pictures of the damage done in Kirkuk. They say civilians have been massacred by government forces, and they've renewed their appeals to the international community for urgent help. Around Kirkuk there are plenty of heavy weapons abandoned by Saddam's men, but plenty more are apparently still in use. In a full-scale armoured confrontation, the Kurds cannot hope to win. Baghdad, meanwhile, continues to proclaim that the rebels have already been routed, with television pictures apparently showing army commanders in control. The battle to oust Saddam from northern Iraq goes on, his forces challenged, but by no means overthrown.
American firefighters have failed to extinguish one of Kuwait's biggest oil well fires. Boots Hanson and his team tried to cap the well twice today without success.
In this nightmare landscape, the firefighters are at last getting to work. As they approach the first blaze, these men from Texas are battered by the heat and are dwarfed by the sheer scale of the destruction. Their first task as they tackle this mesmerizing scene is to pull away the fence around the wellhead. That's to clear the approach for the huge, extraordinary machine which they hope will extinguish the blaze. It's a bulldozer cobbled together with a crane, on the end of which hangs a metal cylinder designed to channel the blaze and simultaneously douse it with water. In command is Boots Hanson, a man apparently immune to the heat. He hopes his method will prove successful enough to be repeated right across Kuwait. It certainly begins well. The machine inches forward, Boots in control, sheltering behind a corrugated iron screen. At this stage, it looks as though it'll work. But the water isn't coming through fast enough. The fire continues. The operation fails.
Yeah, quick, let's get out of here.
So the rig withdraws and Boots Hanson has to think again.
Naturally, you wanted it to work, but it's not that disappointing. It's just because it's just something that happens, and we'll mess around if we can get it with water, or we could probably get some smaller wells. But if we can, like I say, if we could got this one, we could got all of them. We've been in good shape.
He tries once more, but again, water is outmatched by fire. And it'll probably continue to be until a new system is established in the next few weeks of bringing water to the oil fields through the pipelines that normally carry their produce out. Only then will the 500 or so fires ever be stopped. David Shukman, BBC News, Kuwait.
The Russian leader, Boris Yeltsin, who's pressing for the Republic to have a directly elected president, has been strongly attacked by one of his former supporters. At a meeting of the Russian parliament, Vladimir Isakov accused Mr. Yeltsin of trying to get unlimited power for himself. And Mr. Isakov was heckled by other deputies when he said that Mr. Yeltsin had refused to take responsibility for Russia's economic crisis. But the deputies stopped short of calling for a vote of no confidence in Mr. Yeltsin. Now, news of the day's sport. Here's Rob Bonnet.
The First Division lead has changed hands once again thanks to an outstanding performance by struggling Queen's Park Rangers at Liverpool. Rangers scored a convincing 3-1 win with a Les Ferdinand goal, putting them on their way. It was his 7th in 7 games. Alan Smith, meanwhile, put Arsenal back on top with both of his side's goals at Derby. David Rush scored for Sunderland against Crystal Palace for another surprise defeat of a leading club, and Manchester United defender Steve Bruce took his season's goal total to 16 with 2 at Norwich. So Arsenal are back at the top with a 2-point lead over Liverpool, who are 5 points clear of Crystal Palace. Leeds' 2-1 win at Chelsea keeps them ahead of Manchester United. Wimbledon beat Nottingham Forest 3-1. At the foot of the table, Derby's position is more hopeless than before, but Luton were the only other club near the bottom to lose, 2-1 at Sheffield United. Southampton, Coventry and Aston Villa all drew. In Scotland, a Gary Stevens goal decided Rangers' match at Dunfermline, but a Hans Hillhouse hat-trick helped Aberdeen to a more emphatic result at Hibernian. So Rangers' Premier Division lead remains 3 points. Dundee United drew 0-0 with St Johnstone, and Celtic lost 2-1 at home to Motherwell. St Helens have caused a major upset by beating Widnes to reach Rugby League's Silk Cut Challenge Cup final. They earn the right to face Wigan at Wembley with a surprisingly easy victory by 19 points to 2.
Jonathan Davis in outstanding form, but getting an early indication that this wasn't to be his or Widnes' day. His young supporters certainly seemed to sense it. By contrast, Paul Loughlin's kicking was without blemish, giving St Helens an early lead. Davis enjoyed a brief change in fortune to equalise in a tight first half. But it was to be another Welshman, Jonathan Griffiths, who took the day's honours. A former colleague of Davis of Llanelli, Griffiths set up and scored the game's opening try, taking man's pass and accelerating clear of the defence. Then, having resisted a fierce Widnes counter-attack, St Helens scored again as Bishop's astute kick was gathered by Alan Hunt, whose try helped to give his side a 12-point advantage. St Helens, always ready to attack in flamboyant fashion, still weren't satisfied though.
Kevin Ward, just look at that powerful prop goal. Oh, he gets into the party. He's got support, and Jonathan Griffiths is in again.
2 years ago, St Helens beat Widnes in the semis, but lost heavily to Wigan at Wembley. In 4 weeks' time, they'll have the chance of revenge.
The former British heavyweight champion Gary Mason has decided to retire from boxing because of eye damage. Mason sustained the injury, which will require surgery, when he lost his title to the European champion Lennox Lewis earlier this month. It was his only defeat in a 36-fight career. Oxford have won the boat race yet again. Despite predictions that it would be one of the closest contests for years, Oxford beat Cambridge by a comfortable 4 lengths.
Oxford, winners of 14 of the last 15 races, started favourites for the simple reason that history has proved the advantage of being the heavier, stronger crew. But Cambridge, acknowledged as technically superior, felt this could at last be their year and began with that conviction. At the first bend, they were a length up and threatening an upset. But Oxford, with the experienced Rupert Obholzer at stroke, were already fighting back, their superior strength putting them a length clear as they passed Hammersmith Bridge. Cambridge, the effort of trying to keep pace etched deeper in their faces with every stroke, were already beaten. At the finish, Oxford again were comfortable winners, the elation of victory conquering fatigue. But for Cambridge, for the 15th time in 16 years, the physical pain graphically magnified by the agony of defeat.
And that's all from the newsroom on BBC Two. Tonight's main news on BBC One is at 9 o'clock.
Good evening to you. Well, some reasonable weather hanging on for much of the holiday weekend. On Monday we will see some rain pushing southwards across the country. It'll take until the evening probably before that rain reaches the extreme south of England. Let's take a look at the weather charts then. We've got high pressure ruling the roost at the moment. It's weakening these weather fronts as they come in off the Atlantic. One batch of rain to cross Scotland tonight. Another batch of rain reaching northwest Scotland later in the day tomorrow. So some rain already into the Hebrides, that rain crossing Scotland, but the heaviest rain likely to persist in the far northwest, with some clearer intervals developing once again. to the southeast of higher ground. Down the south, a much milder night than recently, but it could turn foggy once more before the morning. Temperatures generally tonight staying at between 4 and 7 degrees, and compare that last night with -3 down at Stansted. While tomorrow, some rather dull weather to start the day, but some sunshine in the extreme south. Still some patchy rain and drizzle down western coasts and some persistent rain up in the north of Scotland. During the course of the day, you will find some sunshine breaking through, particularly to the east of higher ground. And where the sun does pop out, it'll turn quite warm once again today. We saw 15 degrees in a number of places, and I think tomorrow 12 to 14 quite on the cards. It will, though, turn windy, particularly up in the north of Scotland. On Monday, a particularly nasty looking chart there. More wind around, more rain, particularly over northern Britain. And that's it from me.
Hello, the BBC.